Hello, this is Geotech Land, and today I'll be talking about the recent, interesting, controversial, you could say, news that Twitter has banned Trump. I guess it hasn't just been Twitter, it's been also Snapchat and Facebook. My views on this are a little bit complex because I don't think private corporations should be the arbiters of what is truth or what is free speech. And despite what a lot of Trump supporters may think, ultimately, social media and who gets banned or not is going to have a pro-corporate bias. Not a pro-Democrat or pro-conservative bias, but it's going to have a pro-corporate bias. You know, it's the same bias that's in the media, right? It's a pro-corporate bias. And so while a lot of Trump supporters may agree with me that I don't like that private corporations like Twitter or Facebook are deciding who gets banned and who doesn't, in this particular instance, I pretty much agree with Twitter and Facebook banning Trump. And here's why. For the very simple reason that Trump has been inciting violence. And not only is that a violation on Twitter and Facebook's rules and their private corporations, and legally they can do whatever they want, Trump's speech that incites violence is not protected by the First Amendment. The disagreement will be on whether you think Trump incited violence or not. Although he didn't directly tell people to go storm the Capitol building and cause violence directly, he has said a lot of things that has suggested it, and you could say he's fanned the flames of those sentiments that the election is rigged. Don't get me wrong, I think elections are rigged for very different reasons. Most politicians are funded by wealthy donors, and they've rigged elections that way. Voting still matters though, but it's just a little bit stacked against us. And so that's kind of my take. Even though I don't like corporations deciding who gets banned or not, in this particular instance with Trump, I agree with them on them deciding to ban Trump. But I still think that we should move away from social media itself being privately owned social media, and instead join sites like that are based on Mastodon or PeerTube that are more decentralized, because with Mastodon, anyone can create a social network. You can have your own rules, whether you want to ban hate speech very aggressively, whether you want to be kind of more neutral and, you know, still ban hate speech, but allow the community to be able to federate with other instances that are more in favor of free speech. Or if you want to join a Mastodon-based site like Gab, that, at least from what they say, they're hardcore about free speech. And this software is non-commercial. It's made by people that are funded entirely by the community, by donations. It's an independent nonprofit, essentially. A lot of Trump supporters are moving to a site like Parlor, but Parlor itself will have its own biases. The Mercer family are investors in it and are propping it up. Even though right now it might be a beacon of free speech and very Trump friendly, eventually once this thing starts taking off, they're going to want to monetize it. And that's when, again, it just may end up being like another YouTube or Twitter, essentially. Because ultimately their goal as a for-profit company is to make profit. And just like I don't want Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey being arbiters of what is true or not, the same thing applies to the Mercer family. And that's the ironic thing about Trump and his supporters. They're very much against socialism and think they're radicals and tyrannical, despite the fact that Trump supporters are advocating for public ownership of social media, something a lot of leftist socialists would agree with. So I guess if you're a Trump supporter, next time you're having a discussion with someone that is in favor of universal healthcare or publicly owned healthcare, just keep that in mind, because there are obviously some things that should be in the public hands rather than in the hands of privately owned for-profit corporations. And another reason why I don't want Facebook or Twitter being arbiters of free speech is that it's not just Trump supporters that get banned. It's also been a lot of cases where left-wing, especially anti-war left-wing news sites have also been getting banned. And that's the reason why I prefer decentralized social media like Mastodon or PeerTube. I think a lot of Trump supporters think Trump is fighting the establishment, but he really isn't. All his entire cabinet was essentially stacked with Wall Street insiders and a lot of Bush neocons. The way I interpret Trump versus the establishment, quote unquote, is really more like a fight among royalty. The fight is more about who will serve Wall Street and who will keep the same predominant pro-capitalist status quo. But anyways, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you like my content, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.